Aljamain Sterling has got to be one of the most disrespected UFC champions of all time. The amount of crap this guy has to go through on a daily basis just for being a UFC champion is just crazy. And like the craziest part is he doesn't really deserve most of it. I mean, I understand why people hate him, but it's been a long time since he's really done anything wrong. Like people need to kind of get over this stuff. Like this poor man is just being disrespected and being disrespected over and over and over again, and he can't catch a break. Now, where does most of this hate come from? So it originally started from that first fight with Piotr Jan because Aljo was clearly losing the fight. It looked like he was about to get TKO'd eventually. I think it was the fourth round already. Piotr Jan makes the massive mistake of throwing an illegal knee, which concusses Aljo, which actually didn't because if you look at the report later on, he actually was never concussed by it. But anyway, it looked like it concussed him, and Mark Smith decides to whisper, so-called whisper, where everybody can clearly hear him, whispers to the doctor saying that, hey, if he can't continue, this is going to be a disqualification win for Aljo. And he clearly hears that, and all of a sudden he starts playing this whole, oh, I'm so hurt, I can't get up. And I fully understand people for disrespecting him and hating him for that. I hated Aljo for the longest time for that. But that's been like, what, 3 years now? Like, get over it. He's already defended the title against Piotr Jan, so why is everyone getting so mad now? But after that, what kind of made it worse was he was trying to play the victim card and all this sort of stuff. So, okay, it makes sense at the moment. Hate him, whatever. Everybody did. And then, he takes like a year off. While he's doing that, Piotr Jan goes and schools Corey Sandhagen in an amazing 5-round fight. And the disrespect just gets bigger and bigger. Like, everybody's like, Piotr Jan is a champion. Aljo is not the real champion. He won in a fluke way. He won it by acting, by being a coward. So that's kind of where it all began. And then he fights Piotr Jan for the second time and beats him in a razor close split decision, which at the time of watching, I thought Piotr won. But when I rewatched it, I can give it to Aljo too. Because the fight really came up to the first round. Second and third round was clear Aljo. Fourth and fifth was clear Piotr Jan. So the first round is kind of where everything came from, and where everything, what mattered. But that was the main round of the whole entire fight. That was the one that was really the only round that did matter because the other was 2-2, so it was the last one. And Aljo did start off a little bit faster, a little bit better than Piotr Jan. He looked a little bit, he was actually tagging him up a little bit here and there more. But that's how Piotr Jan typically starts all of his fights. So that's kind of a ding on his fighting style. So after that, a lot of people started calling him the fluke master, calling it a robbery and all this sort of stuff. Which, that's just how it is when you have close fights. But, when the competition is right up there with you, it's pretty hard to dominate. Not many champions can just dominate a division very easily. So, it is what it is. But anyway, he moves on, fights TJ Dillashaw after Dillashaw's, what was it, a year or 2 years off, whatever, after the Sandhagen fight because he was injured. TJ Dillashaw comes in, and Aljo just dominates the fight. TKOs him in the second round. But the biggest problem with that is that Dillashaw came into the fight with an extremely bad injury on his shoulder. His shoulder kept popping out. He couldn't throw, I believe it was his left shoulder, couldn't throw the left hand whatsoever. So he was a one-handed man. And people were hating on Aljo because he didn't beat him in the first round. People were giving him a bunch of shit for it. So the biggest problem with it was Aljo's whole title reign so far has been like fluky wins. It's like he's just been getting the best circumstances. He gets a super close, like razor thin fight with Piotr Jan, and a lot of people thought he lost that fight. And then some of the hate probably finally goes away. He did earn a little bit of respect for beating Piotr Jan, but then like some of the hate goes away, and then he fights TJ Dillashaw, which everyone was like, oh, Dillashaw's gonna come in, he's gonna take that title back. But if Aljo beats him, he's the GOAT. I remember hearing that. And then once Dillashaw comes in with a messed up shoulder, nobody counted Aljo as the GOAT no more. Nobody wanted him there. Everybody hating on him, because he did take it like a real victory. It's not really that real of a victory in my opinion, but it's just how it is. So he gets a bunch of hate from that because he's kind of just fluking his way around. And then later on, he goes and fights, what's his name? Little midget man, Henry Cejudo. Fights Henry Cejudo. And again, another razor close fight, a split decision victory for him. Which, in my opinion, whenever I watched the fight live, I thought Henry Cejudo won, but it was just that close of a fight. But the biggest problem with it is the fifth round. The fifth round was a clear Cejudo round, and one of the judges gave it to Aljo, and that's why he won the split decision. So, like, it's not Aljo's fault. It's the judging, but obviously the fighter's going to take all the heat for it, and because of this, people just don't respect him whatsoever. Aljo has been on a complete tear. I don't even know how long of a win streak he's on. He's on a very long win streak at this point. His last loss was a knockout to Marlon Moraes, but otherwise he's been pretty dominant in all of his fights. Or when it came up to the title itself, he was pretty dominant. But once he started fighting for a title, time and time again, it's kind of hard to be dominant, in all these fights. So he gets kind of an undeserved amount of hate. I understand why people don't like him. People want him to lose for that whole, acting scenario that he did against Petr Yan in the first fight. But, he's kind of proven himself to be the real champion at this point. He did beat Petr Yan in the rematch, so you can't hate on him too much at this point. And in all honesty, I'm kind of rooting for him in this fight against Sean O'Malley, because I think Sean O'Malley is one of the most undeserving title contenders we've seen in a while. And a lot of people hate on Colby Covington for getting a title shot against Leon Edwards, but at least Colby has victories over people that were ranked. Sean O'Malley doesn't have any ranked wins besides Petr Yan, which was a clear-cut robbery in my opinion. I watched the fight. I thought it was a 30-27 Yan. At worst, 29-28 because the fifth or the third round, because he landed a really good knee that cut Yan open. But otherwise, Yan should have won that fight with a unanimous decision. And he got a split decision, loss. He lost a split decision to Sean O'Malley. But that's Sean O'Malley's only ranked win. Otherwise, everybody else that he fights, I'm pretty sure somebody else said, don't quote me on this, but pretty sure all of his other opponents aren't even in the UFC anymore. The only other guy that's ranked that he fought now is Chito Vera, and Chito Vera beat him in the first round. He knocked him out. And a lot of people call that a fluky win, but no, I think that's a pretty legit win. He hit his peroneal nerve, and his foot just went dead. But that's all because of Chito Vera. That's not Sean O'Malley. It's not Sean O'Malley's ankles being weak and all this sort of stuff. No, it's a peroneal nerve. It is what it is. And Chito Vera hit him there. Maybe he meant to. Maybe he didn't. It just kind of happens sometimes. But guess what? You hit him there, and then he capitalized on it and knocked him out in the first round. So can't hate on that. But O'Malley's been. I just don't think he's deserving for this title shot. I mean, he beat Petr Yan, technically, sure, but that's about it. He's getting babied so hard in this bantamweight division, which is just so unfair to anybody else. I mean, I understand Merab is the clear-cut number one contender, and Merab's not going to fight Aljo. But here's the problem. If Aljo wins, which I think he's going to win this weekend, and he moves up to 145, the UFC is going to cut Aljo. I don't even think they're going to give him the chance to become a double champion if he were to win against Volkanovski. They're just going to disrespect him that bad, and they're going to give a title shot right away. I don't think they're going to give one to Merab. There's no chance they're going to give it to Merab, because the UFC really hates Merab too. But if Aljo moves up, I don't think the UFC is going to give him that chance to be a double champion, and they're just going to give Sean O'Malley another title shot. And if Sean O'Malley somehow wins this weekend by, some quick knockout, it could happen. If he wins, guess what's going to happen to Aljo? The UFC is going to say, oh, he's moving up. Don't even give him a rematch. It's not worth our time. After they're making him fight 3 months after his last fight, which is just completely unfair to him. Because whenever Aljo said that he probably might not be ready to fight, this weekend, 3 months after he just fought a heavy wrestling fighter. He had a really wrestling heavy approach to this fight, so that's really grueling, and he's going to have injuries from that. The UFC said, well, we're just going to cut him then. We're going to do a vacant belt fight, which is just crazy to me. Why? That just makes no sense. There's no reason to disrespect the man so bad. But if Sean O'Malley wins this weekend, the UFC's new superstar, all this sort of shit, he's going to get more, what is it called? He's going to get those stylistically favorable matchups towards him. That's all he's been doing. He hasn't fought a dominant wrestler this whole time. You know, he's been out for like 10 months at this point. He could have fought Merab. Why don't they do that? Because Merab is going to dominate him. They know that. And they want Sean O'Malley to be this next big superstar and all this stuff because all the 14-year-olds that smoke weed, you know, they love his curly hair. They love the way he talks. They love that he's an absolute cuck. But I just don't think he's deserving of any of, you know, the hype, the anything like that. So, man, I hope he loses because he needs some like humble pie. And the craziest thing about Sean O'Malley, I noticed, he's staying real quiet. He's not talking. He's not saying anything because he knows that it's not a favorable matchup and he has a really good chance of losing. But back to Aljo. I mean, he's just so disrespected. It's crazy to me. I think he deserves way more respect for the fights he's been putting on. He's been putting on good fights. I mean, good performances. You know, like I understand the hate from the Petr Yan one fight, but it's been years. Like, get over it, guys. It's he doesn't deserve this disrespect. You know, the craziest thing is he doesn't even complain too much about it either. He kind of mentions it here and that the UFC disrespects him. But there's been champions like Tyron Woodley who was never disrespected, and he claims that he's the most disrespected UFC champion and all this sort of crap. But Tyron Woodley had pretty favorable matchups too. He was very well respected by the UFC, and he complained, but people listened to him more than when it came to Aljo. I don't understand why. He doesn't deserve it. I mean, he's a pretty cool dude. If you listen to his YouTube videos, I think he does a podcast too. Like, he's pretty interesting. He's a cool dude. He seems like a pretty laid back dude, and you know, he admits his wrongs, but it is what it is. I just don't think he deserves this kind of hate. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and until next time.
Fuck you, MMA Vic.